Hello, and welcome to How to Write an Academic Essay with me, David Gillam. Let me begin by asking you two questions. Why do we write academic essays, and what is an academic essay? Academic essays are simply justified arguments, with the emphasis on justified. They allow us to form opinions based not on hearsay and subjective opinion, but on objective facts and evidence found through research. Academic essays help us to discover truth and allow us to share and demonstrate this with others. There are a number of different kinds of pieces, written pieces that is, from opinion pieces to news articles and formal essays. The first two constitute the majority of writings one might find in a newspaper, news website or blog post, while the latter tend to be formally published. However, there are many kinds of academic essay, from historical, philosophical, economic, scientific and more. News pieces ought to simply present facts without an opinion given. Opinion pieces ought to be presented as a subjective thought of a person and therefore not taken to be objective fact. Academic essays, on the other hand, firstly, examine all the available evidence, and then secondly, make justified arguments from the evidence available. It is important to note that steps 1 and 2 cannot be switched around. In other words, you cannot have an opinion and then selectively choose evidence to support your view. I want you to pause the video now and search online for 3 kinds of written pieces on either of the topics, the war on drugs or fracking in the Karoo. Please find me a blog or opinion piece, a news article, and a published article. Here's a hint. Published articles will have numerous references. Once you have found these, give them a read and post the links with a short summary of no more than a paragraph on each in the comments section. So academic essays are concerned with evidence and arguments for conclusions based on the evidence, okay? The next question you should be asking yourself is, what counts as evidence? The short answer is, only credible sources. Credible sources are referenceable and tend to be published in journal articles or books and also online. However, online resources can be slightly dodgy. Referencing a blog post, for instance, would not be considered a legitimately credible source. So you cannot simply pick any website and use it as a source, unless you have exceptionally good reasons for doing so. Interestingly, the issue of credible sources is slightly problematic. For instance, an advert for a car, or a blog post for that matter, might not be generally considered a credible source for an essay, unless the research deals specifically with, for instance, car adverts or blog posts. Aside from the exceptional circumstance, credible sources are generally considered to be published works with numerous references. However, the credibility of the source is not the only criteria a marker cares about. The quality of the source is often of almost equal importance. Therefore, for the purpose of this short tutorial, I generally recommend using published works such as books and journal articles. Please pause the video once again and write a short paragraph below explaining how a novel, say Harry Potter, might be considered as a credible source for certain research, but not for other kinds of research. To recap up to this point, an academic essay sources credible information on a given topic. This is the evidence or justification, and then makes arguments towards a certain conclusion from said evidence. I'd like now to move on to the 6 phases of writing an essay. So I've created this to try and help you really break down how you should go through writing an essay step by step. The first step, research. The first step of an academic paper is the research. This is why such papers are often referred to as, you guessed it, research papers. So once you have received a topic, you ought to spend a substantial amount of time researching the topic. This means Googling sub-issues within the topic and finding out as much as there is to know on any given topic. Importantly, most academic topics with any credibility will leave room for a nuanced answer. That means there may be evidence in more than one direction. For instance, research on the question, is South Africa a transformed nation after 20 years of democracy, may well yield polar results. It is your duty to report on this disparity and then to answer the question as best you can using the evidence you have researched. You should not go into the question with preconceived notions about the answer, but rather form an opinion and an argument based on the research you have conducted. Once you have completed your research phase, which is phase 1, you need to plan the essay. In other words, before you begin, you should know precisely what it is you want to say and how you want to say it. This plan is phase 2. Consider the previous example. You might have discovered that South Africa has a much larger black middle class than it did pre-democracy, and this could be considered evidence of transformation. You may have also discovered that white privilege continues to exist, and this might be considered evidence that more transformation is necessary. With this evidence then considered, you might plan the essay as such. Present evidence 1, conclude that this shows transformation. Present evidence 2, conclude that this detracts from transformation. Please note that in each of these 4 steps, you should use a paragraph per step, and so on. Of course, such limited evidence could hardly be considered conclusive either way, and so to answer this kind of question, more evidence would be required. Nevertheless, the purpose of this example was simply to illustrate that once you have gathered this and synthesized your evidence, which is phase 1, you need to plan your essay, which is phase 2. Think of this plan as a map of where you want to go. Now that you have gathered your research, phase 1, and planned the essay, phase 2, you need to write the body, which is phase 3. An essay has 3 parts: the introduction, the body, and the conclusion. When writing the essay, always begin with the body. This is the part of the essay you have prepared for in phase 2. Writing the body is therefore phase 3. As stated previously, the body should present evidence and then make arguments from the evidence. The best way to write the body is to present a piece of evidence in no more than 1 paragraph of perhaps 4 to 10 sentences, and then make an argument or show the importance of the evidence in the following paragraph. Follow this rule of thumb: 1 piece of evidence or idea per paragraph. This means that the body of your essay should contain a number of paragraphs. There is nothing worse than an essay that is just 1 long paragraph. Phases 4 and 5 are critical and are very similar. Phase 4 is the introduction. It should be an outline of exactly what is to come in the essay, in chronological order. In other words, referencing the previous example. The introduction should read, this essay answers the question, is South Africa a transformed nation after 20 years of democracy? It does so by presenting evidence X, Y, and Z, arguing that A, B, and C, and therefore concludes that. The introduction should tell the reader exactly what is to come in what follows. If the essay plan, phase 2, is a roadmap for you, the writer, then the introduction, phase 4, is a roadmap for the reader. The body, phase 3, is the journey, taking the reader through the gathered evidence and convincing the reader that X, Y, and Z are the case. Phase 5, the conclusion, is a reflection on the journey. Imagine you have just driven 10 hours to go somewhere. Along the way, you witness an accident. When you get to your destination, you think back on the drive, including the accident. This thinking back or reflecting upon is what a conclusion is. It summarizes everything that has happened, all the evidence and arguments presented, and may give some final remarks on these. However, no new information may be added in at this stage. The conclusion should read very much like the introduction. In conclusion, South Africa is or is not transformed after 20 years of democracy. This is evident after taking into account evidence X, Y, and Z, which logically imply A, B, and C arguments. And it is therefore evident that South Africa is or is not transformed after 20 years of democracy. Phase 6. This phase is critical. This is the phase that will separate you from those who get 65 and those who get 75. Phase 6 is the post-writing process. Always use a computer to write the essay. This is the first thing you must always do. This is non-negotiable. Once you have completed the essay, do a spell check. I also recommend reading it out loud to a friend. This will have two outcomes. Any spelling and grammar issues or lengthy and unwieldy sentences will become immediately apparent. Secondly, your friend might disagree with an argument you have made. This in turn will probably lead to a debate, allowing you to sharpen your argument and ultimately improve the essay and the result you achieve. This entire process, the post-writing process, is phase 6. In summary of the entire tutorial, academic essays differ from opinion pieces in that they are not purely subjective and do not simply aim to convince the reader of a particular opinion, although they do attempt to convince the reader about certain justified conclusions. Neither is an academic essay simply a news piece, only stating facts. Academic essays require, firstly, evidence, and secondly, reasoned argument from this evidence. It is also important to remember that evidence ought to be credible and of good quality. If you are unsure if a source counts as either of the above, always consult a navigator for help. With these things in mind, you are ready to begin the 6 phases of writing. Phase 1, research the question. Phase 2, plan the essay. Phase 3, write the body. Phase 4, write the introduction. Phase 5, write the conclusion. Phase 6, do post-writing checks. Now that you know the basics of writing an academic essay, write a short essay of no more than 750 words on the question: is advertising the same thing as indoctrination? Bring this short essay to class and give it your best shot, because for this assignment, your peers, not your navigator, will be the judge of the quality of your work. Have fun, and if you have any questions at all regarding this short introduction, please comment below with it. If you don't understand something, one of your peers will be able to help. There is no point in sitting confused about anything, and in my book, there is no such thing as a stupid question, so please ask away.